We're all about helping you really understand something important, really get to the core of it without wasting your time.
Absolutely.
Let's really break down design thinking.
Sounds good.
What it is at its heart, where it came from, the key principles, the steps involved,
Yep.
and then how it's actually being used, especially in architecture, to create the spaces we live and work in.
Perfect.
The goal, to give you a solid grasp of this approach without getting lost in the jargon.
I like it. Let's do it. At its core, you can think of design thinking as a problem-solving mindset that really emphasizes the human element, more than anything else. It's about integrating the perspectives of everyone involved.
Everyone.
Yeah, the users, the designers, stakeholders, everyone. It's not just about the end product, it's about the entire process.
And it's not a straight line from A to B, is it?
No, not at all. It's more
Exactly.
cyclical, more like a loop.
A loop?
Yeah, you go back and forth, revisit stages. As you get more information, like feedback from users or from testing.
It's more flexible.
Exactly. It allows you to make adjustments along the way and end up with a much better solution. And there are certain priorities that are crucial, really important in this process.
Priorities.
Yeah. First off, empathy. You have to really understand the needs and experiences of the people you're designing for. Really get into their shoes.
Put yourself in their place.
Exactly. Then there's collaboration. You need to bring in a range of skills and viewpoints. The more diverse, the better.
So it's not a solo endeavor.
Definitely not. And then experimentation. Try things out. Build quick prototypes. Get feedback. Don't be afraid to fail.
Test, learn, adapt.
Yes. And, of course, creativity is essential. Think outside the box.
Encourage those unconventional solutions.
And finally, be adaptable. Be willing to adjust your approach as you learn more.
Okay, so it's this combination of really understanding the user, collaborating, experimenting. It sounds pretty different from how we usually approach problems.
Right. Traditional problem solving often focuses on hard data, logic, finding that single right answer.
The purely rational approach.
Yeah. But design thinking, while it definitely uses data, it also values intuition, creativity, that iterative process of testing and learning.
Embraces the human element.
Exactly. And that often leads to solutions you wouldn't find through just pure logic, especially when you're dealing with people's needs and experiences.
Fascinating. So this approach, it didn't just appear overnight, did it?
No, definitely not. It has roots going back decades.
Like how far back are we talking?
Well, back in the 50s and 60s, you had researchers in all sorts of fields, engineering, architecture, psychology. They started exploring more structured ways to solve problems. They were trying to understand, how do designers think? What makes their approach so unique?
So it started more as an academic pursuit.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
And a really important figure from that time is Herbert Simon.
Herbert Simon.
Yeah, he was this brilliant economist and cognitive scientist, even won a Nobel Prize. He wrote this book in 1969, The Sciences of the Artificial. It's kind of a classic, and his argument was basically that design itself is a problem-solving activity.
Ah, interesting.
But a key part of that, something he emphasized, is that you really need to deeply explore and understand the problem before you jump to solutions.
Okay, I see.
And that's become a fundamental principle of design thinking. Make sure you're solving the right problem in the first place.
Makes sense.
Right.
So Simon laid that foundation. But how did design thinking go from a theory to being used in the real world?
Well, the 80s and 90s were really key for that.
Those decades saw a lot of change.
That's for sure. And that's when design thinking really started taking off in the business world and, of course, in architecture.
Okay.
And a big part of that was David Kelly. He founded this design firm, IDE, and they really push those human-centered design principles.
IDEO, I've heard of them.
Yeah, very influential. Those principles are central to how design thinking is used in so many industries now.
So how about its application in architecture?
Well, in architecture, design thinking became this way to create spaces that really put the human experience first.
Human experience.
Yeah, not just function and looks, but how people actually feel and interact with the space.
Makes sense.
Architects started to adopt these really empathy-driven approaches.
Empathy-driven.
Yeah. They realized buildings aren't just static objects.
Right.
They need to be adaptable, responsive to people's needs, and support well-being. So it was a big shift toward thinking about the user in architectural design.
Okay, so we've talked about what design thinking is and where it came from. Now let's get into the how. All right. I know there's this well-known 5-stage framework for design thinking.
Right, the 5 stages.
Could you walk us through those?
Absolutely. So we have empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test.
Okay, 5 stages.
Yeah. Think of them as a guide for continuous innovation, not strict rules. It's a framework, popularized by the Stanford D School and IDEO.
Stanford D School.
Yeah.
Got it. So let's start with empathize.
Okay, so empathize is all about understanding your users.
Users.
Yeah, the people who will be using what you're designing.
Makes sense.
You need to understand their needs, their wants, their frustrations, even the context they live in.
Really get to know them.
Yeah, and the most important thing here is to set aside your own assumptions.
Don't project your own ideas.
Exactly. Approach it from their perspective. What do they actually need? It's about understanding their emotional landscape. Sometimes you discover needs that functional requirements just miss.
It's about more than just the practicalities.
Yeah, and this leads to designs that are, more helpful, more supportive, and ultimately more successful.
Okay, so how do you actually build that empathy, practically?
There are a few really good techniques.
Techniques.
Yeah. User interviews are great. You can directly ask them about their experiences, their feelings.
Straight from the source.
Exactly. Then there's observation. Watch how people behave in their natural environment.
See how they actually use things.
Yeah. It can reveal a lot that people don't even realize themselves. And it's also important to analyze the broader context, their cultural background, social environment, all of that.
Get the full picture.
Yes. And then there's this tool called persona development.
Persona development.
Yeah, it's basically creating these fictional but realistic representations of your typical users.
Sort of like characters in a story.
A little bit, yeah. You give them names, backgrounds, goals, frustrations.
Makes them more real.
Right, and it helps you keep the user in mind throughout the whole design process.
I can see how that would be helpful. Can you give us an example of this empathize phase in action, like in architecture?
Sure. Imagine you're designing a new hospital, right?
Okay, how hospital?
In the empathize phase, you wouldn't just look at blueprints. You'd actually talk to doctors, nurses, patients, visitors, everyone.
Really understand how the space is used.
Yeah, find out what's frustrating them, what would make their experience better.
So the design considers everyone's needs.
Exactly. And by really engaging with people, you make sure the final design is truly human-centered.
So you've gathered all these insights, you really understand the users. What's next?
Well, then we move to the define stage.
Define.
Yeah, it's about making sense of all the information you collected during empathize.
So kind of like organizing your findings.
In a way, yeah. You're looking for patterns, common themes, and then you use that to clearly define the problem you're actually trying to solve.
Okay.
You write a problem statement,
Right.
basically. And this statement should be focused and human-centered. It's about getting to the heart of the issue.
So it guides the rest of the design process.
Precisely. And by really focusing on the problem, you set yourself up to find the best solutions. It's about quality over quantity, you know.
So what are you specifically doing in this define stage?
You're looking for those key insights from your research.
Like the biggest takeaways.
Exactly. And then you use those to reframe the problem, really make it specific and actionable.
Like framing.
Yeah, it's about shifting from a general issue to a more focused question that you can actually tackle with design.
Can you give us an architectural example of that, reframing?
Sure. Let's say you're working on a community development project.
Okay.
And the initial problem is there's not enough green space in this neighborhood.
Not enough parks.
Right. But that's pretty broad, isn't it?
Pretty general, yeah.
So you go through the empathize phase, you talk to residents, see how they use the existing space, and you realize they want places to connect with each other, be active, you know, things like that.
More than just grass and trees.
Exactly. So you reframe the problem to something like, how can we create engaging green spaces that foster community and well-being in this dense neighborhood?
That is much more specific.
Right. And it opens up all sorts of possibilities for solutions that are more than just adding a park.
Yeah, I see that. So now we have our clearly defined problem. What comes next?
Next comes the ideate phase.
Ideate. Sounds like brainstorming time.
It is. This is where you generate ideas, as many as possible. The goal is quantity, not quality at this stage. Don't censor yourself.
No bad ideas.
Exactly. Just throw everything out there, even the crazy stuff. Explore all the possibilities.
Push the boundaries.
Yeah, because that's how you often find the most innovative solutions.
Makes sense. So what are some good ways to get those creative juices flowing?
Well, brainstorming in a group is always great. Different perspectives, bouncing ideas off each other.
Collaboration.
Exactly. And then you have things like mind mapping, which is a visual way to connect ideas.
And there are more structured methods too, right?
Oh, yeah. One I like is Scamper. Scamper.
It stands for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, put to another use, eliminate, and reverse.
That's a mouthful.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's a great way to look at a problem from different angles.
So like for substitute, you might ask, what material could we use instead of this?
Exactly. Or for combine, you might ask, can we merge these two ideas together? And so on.
It's a system for brainstorming.
Yeah, it helps you think outside the box.
How would architects use this ideate phase?
Let's go back to that sustainable school example.
Okay.
So the problem is, how can we design a school that's super eco-friendly and also teaches kids about sustainability?
Good problem.
Right. So using Scamper, they might ask, what if we use local sustainable materials instead of concrete?
Okay.
Or can we combine solar panels with the roof structure?
Cool idea.
Right? Can we adapt old ventilation techniques for the modern building?
Interesting.
Or even, what if we make the building systems visible so kids can learn from them?
That's great.
Right. So you get all these creative possibilities. Yeah, I love that. So we've brainstormed tons of ideas. Now what?
Now we move into the prototype phase.
Prototype.
Yeah, this is where you take some of your best ideas from the ideate phase and you make them real, but not like the final product, more like a rough draft.
Early versions.
Exactly. These can be physical models, sketches, mock-ups, anything that lets you see and interact with the idea.
Test it out.
Exactly. This allows you to spot any flaws early on, get feedback, and make improvements before you invest a ton of time and resources.
Like a trial run.
Yeah. And it really encourages that experimentation and learning mindset.
So why not just go straight to the final design? Why bother with prototypes?
Well, prototypes are super valuable for a few reasons. First, they let you test your assumptions quickly and cheaply. It's much easier to fix a problem in a prototype than in a finished building, right?
Oh, definitely.
And second, it gives you something concrete to show people and get their feedback.
Easier to understand than just an idea.
Absolutely. And finally, it forces you to try things out, learn from mistakes, and make those improvements.
It's about continuous improvement.
Exactly. So it leads to better designs overall.
Okay, so how about an example in architecture? How would you use prototypes?
Let's say you're designing a community center, right?
Right, community center.
Instead of drawing detailed blueprints right away, you might build simple models with cardboard just to try out different layouts.
Like a miniature version.
Yeah. Or you could use computer programs to make visualizations. You could even mock up a room using existing furniture just to see how it feels.
Okay, I see.
And by showing these prototypes to people who might use the center, you can get valuable feedback.
Like, is this layout easy to navigate? Do we need more space here?
Exactly. And you can make those changes early on.
Before it's too late.
Right.
So we've built our prototypes, got some feedback. What's the final stage?
The final stage is test.
Test.
Yeah. This is where you take those prototypes and you put them in front of real users in the actual environment.
See how it works in real life.
Exactly. You watch how people interact with the design, you ask them specific questions, you collect their feedback, both what they say and how they behave.
Like if they get confused or frustrated.
Exactly. And this testing gives you incredibly valuable insights.
And those insights help you refine the design even further.
Exactly.
So what are you really hoping to achieve with all this testing?
You want to see what works, what doesn't work, and what can be improved. And then you iterate, you make those changes.
So you go back and adjust the design based on what you learned.
Exactly. And sometimes the testing might even make you rethink the whole approach, you know?
You might need to go back to an earlier stage.
Right. Like maybe the problem wasn't defined correctly, or you need to generate more ideas.
So it's not always linear.
Not at all.
Yeah.
That's what makes design thinking so powerful. It's adaptable, it's responsive to what you learn.
Okay. So one last example in architecture.
Yeah.
How would you use the test phase?
Let's say you've redesigned an airport terminal to improve passenger flow.
A lot of people moving through there.
Yeah. So you could create a computer simulation or even a temporary mock-up in the actual airport and then observe how people move through the space.
Like a test run.
Exactly. You can see where there are bottlenecks, where people get confused, and you can ask them for feedback on things like the signage or the layout.
And then use that to make final adjustments before it's built for real.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've gone through these 5 stages in detail, but I'm curious, what impact is design thinking actually having in the world of architecture today?
Oh, it's having a huge impact in several areas.
It's huge.
Yeah. One of the biggest is in creating more human-centered spaces.
Human-centered.
Right. By really understanding people's needs, how they behave, even how they feel in a space, architects can design buildings that are not just functional, but also intuitive and enjoyable to be in.
They feel good to use.
Exactly. And it's not just about designing for people, it's about designing with them in mind.
That's a good distinction.
Yeah. And we talked about some examples earlier, like Maggie Centers in the High Line.
Right, those were great examples.
Yeah. Maggie Centers are cancer support centers, and they're known for being incredibly calming and welcoming.
So important at that context.
Absolutely. And that's because the architects spent so much time understanding the emotional needs of patients and their families. That informed every design decision, like the use of natural light and materials.
They really put themselves in the user's shoes.
They did. And then the High Line, transforming that old railway into a park, it wasn't just about making the city look better.
More than just aesthetics.
Right. It was about understanding how people wanted to use that space, how they wanted to connect with nature and each other.
It's become a real community hub.
Yeah, it has. And both of those examples show how design thinking can lead to spaces that really resonate with people.
Powerful stuff. What about sustainability, environmentally friendly design? Is design thinking being used there too?
Oh, absolutely. It's a key driver for sustainable and adaptive design. Yeah, designs that can change and respond to different conditions.
Interesting.
So by really focusing on the user's needs, but also keeping the environment in mind, architects are coming up with really innovative solutions.
Like what?
Well, you have smart cities, for example. They use technology to manage energy, resources, transportation, all in ways that are user-friendly and make the city more livable.
Okay.
And then you have things like passive houses.
Passive houses.
They're designed to use very little energy by working with the local climate and taking advantage of things like natural light and ventilation.
Oh, wow.
And the key here is that design thinking helps make sure these sustainable solutions are not only good for the planet, but they actually work for the people using them.
So it's not just about green technology for its own sake.
No, it's about making those technologies work for people, making them comfortable and convenient.
Right, otherwise people won't use them.
Exactly.
So you mentioned urban planning earlier. How's design thinking being used to shape our cities?
Well, cities are complicated, right? So many people, so many problems.
And they're constantly changing.
They are. But design thinking gives us a way to deal with those complexities.
By focusing on the people who live there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, for example, take traffic congestion. Instead of just building more roads, we can use design thinking to understand how people actually move through the city.
Their patterns of movement.
Yeah. And then design better public transport, bike lanes, walking paths, all sorts of things.
Make it easier to get around without a car.
Exactly. And it's being used for housing, too, finding creative ways to create affordable, high-quality homes that fit into the existing urban fabric.
It's about more than just building apartments.
Right. It's about creating communities, places where people want to live and thrive.
So it sounds like design thinking is really changing how we approach design.
It is. It's moving us away from just solving problems on a functional level and toward creating solutions that actually improve people's lives.
It's about creating spaces that are functional and beautiful and sustainable and just feel good to be in.
Exactly. And that's really powerful.
It is. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into design thinking.
Yeah, it has.
We've covered so much. What it is, where it came from, the 5 stages, how it's being used, especially in architecture. It's such a valuable approach.
It is.
It can be used to tackle all sorts of challenges, not just in design, but in any field, really.
Absolutely. It's about understanding people, trying things out, learning, and constantly improving.
So as you go about your day, Think about this.
Okay.
How could you apply the principles of design thinking to your own life?
That's a good one.
What problems are you facing? What are the needs of the people around you? How could you approach those challenges in a more empathetic, iterative way? Might be surprised by what you discover.
That's a great takeaway.